what is a marriage? Considering the fact that marriage has been around pretty much as long as human civilization has, and every single civilization except one has had some form of marriage, you'd think we'd know what a marriage actually is. But we don't. Coming up with any definition of marriage is incredibly complicated, and people disagree on it all the time. Just listen to some of these definitions. It's when two people want to be together. So it's friendship. I want some lifelong friends, but that doesn't mean that any of them are married to me. The desire to be with someone, even if both people have that desire, doesn't make a marriage. An agreement between two people to produce babies. Okay, I'll grant you, there's some historical backing behind that. Back in the day when infidelity and infertility were really the two reasons why you could get a divorce, that made sense because most of the money was tied up in land. Land requires an inheritance. That was incredibly important to have a legitimate heir. But today, I can make an agreement with somebody to have my kid who I'm not married with, and I met over the internet. That's not at all a basis for a definition of marriage today. Marriage is just when two people decide that they're married. How very Roman of you. Yes. Back in the day before anyone recorded who was married or not, the only thing that was actually required to be married was the consent between two individuals, at least in Western societies. This continued all the way up through the early Middle Ages and into the 1100s or so, when the Catholic Church finally started saying that you needed something more than consent. The problem is that consent is remarkably easy to lie about and to fake. If it's just two people, each agreeing in their hearts that they're married and not just living together, that's fine, but then anybody can claim that, and the problem is that many people did. And they've recognized that you need something more than simply consent between the two parties to make a marriage. Marriage is the union between one man and one woman. Oh, okay. I knew that we were going to get to this one. Yeehaw. Okay, as much as some people would want this to be the definition of marriage today, it's just plain not. Homosexuals can get married. There are people who are married who are not one man and one woman. That no longer is a sufficient definition. Besides, what does a union mean? Joining together in what way? That's a really vague statement. We need something more specific to define the particular relationship of marriage. Then marriage is saying your vows before God and in a church. And now we're back to the medieval definition. In 1215, when the Roman Catholic Church finally went from a consent-based definition of marriage to something more formal, they decided that to be married, you needed three things. You needed to be married in a church, presumably with the blessing of a priest. You needed to say vows, the classic I do, incorporating the consent element. And you needed to have proclamation for several weeks beforehand in the village. So a marriage as vows before God does definitely have historical backing, but it doesn't fit today. There are a number of people who get married before a justice of the peace. Saying vows before God is not a sufficient definition of marriage anymore. Neither is doing it in a church. And we certainly don't post the wedding banns for a month beforehand. Well, marriage is just when two people are in love. No, it isn't. You can't get much more unhistorical than this, because until the 1700s, the vast majority of marriages were not made because of love. Marriages were primarily arranged, or at least approved by the family, to create some form of positive benefit to the family. Getting you better connections, getting you better land, a trade that you needed, something to benefit the family that was not primarily about even the individuals, let alone about the individuals being in love. That's sort of an idea you first really see in the 1500s, and it takes until the middle 1700s for that to be the dominant way of looking at marriage. That's an incredibly recent thing as far as the lifespan of marriage goes. Even today, 50 to 60% of marriages around the world are arranged. While love can grow out of a relationship like that, it certainly isn't one of the primary reasons why it got married in the first place. For most people, in most times, love is not a relevant part of the definition of marriage. Marriage is an agreement to have sex without societal prohibitions. That's probably a disturbingly accurate definition for a lot of people. The problem is that as sex, both in and outside of marriage, becomes less stigmatized, that's less of a reason to get married. It also doesn't fit all marriages. You have couples who are separated for one reason or another, perhaps even working in completely different countries, and sex hasn't been part of the marriage in years. Fine. A consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. Get out of that. Reading straight from the dictionary this time, huh? Yeah, that's fair enough. That's how Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines it. But even that has some problems. I know older couples that can't get recognized by the law because they'd lose all of their benefits, and so got married in a church but didn't sign the paperwork and are living together. Everyone relates to them as a married couple, but the state does not. Side tangent. Do you notice how sex and desire and sexuality play such a small part in any of these definitions, and yet those are the things that have completely come to dominate the discussion of marriage in America today? You could be forgiven for thinking that all of these definitions are so broad-ranging that they're talking about completely different things, because in a very real sense, they are. Every type of marriage comes with a set of responsibilities and a set of privileges that are unique to that particular type of marriage. Inheritance issues, issues of legitimacy, tax benefits, reduced family pressures, end-of-life benefits, health insurance. When marriage was defined simply by two people coming together with the intention of getting married, that caused a bit of a problem. People could pretend that they weren't married or pretend that they were and completely built the system. You didn't know. People recognized very early on that some authority larger than the couple themselves needed to be brought in to monitor the situation. These privileges and responsibilities needed to be approved by somebody other than the couple. This began primarily as a community policing situation, that in an arranged marriage, the parents would decide this, the community would welcome in the new bride or the new groom, and that was a fairly simple way of organizing things. But as civilization got more complex, people spread out from their communities, other authorities needed to be brought in. Today we have three main off camera. Your average marriage today is based on three separate authorities. The earliest and most basic authority has been around for the entire time marriage has, and that is the community. You claim this person, the community recognizes that claim and helps you to protect that claim, as well as recognizing any children that comes from that marriage as the two of yours. In exchange, you submit to the community's approval of your spouse and behave in a way that the community can support. No one can stop somebody from getting married this way. All you have to do is have your community of friends and family agree that you are with this person, claiming this person, and support you in that. 48% of people in America today live together before getting married. Those relationships have the authority of community. The second authority is that of the state. Now, the state authority is fairly recent. In the United States, marriage licenses weren't being widely issued until the middle 19th century. But this is primarily the authority that people think of when they think of marriage. If you don't get your certificate from the government signed, then many people don't consider you married at all. Even though this is the most recent authority on marriage, and basically, as far as the history of marriage goes, it's just been a blip on the radar. The third authority is that of God or the church. The church has been officially legitimizing marriages for 1,000 years and has been recognizing them much earlier than that. However, this is also one of the hardest ones to define. Every religious community has different expectations on who can get married and what your behavior will be like once you are married. Different groups also confer different benefits upon married couples, and of course you have the presumed blessings of the God behind it. Each of these authorities recognizes different people in different ways, and each one of these authorities has different sets of expectations and different benefits that they confer upon people who are married according to that authority. But they are very different. We meld them together. You go to a church wedding and you get married in a church by a pastor or priest, sign the certificate with friends and family there to witness it. All three authorities are taken care of in one, but they are all recognizing slightly different forms of marriage. You can see how each of these authorities are separate when we look at specific examples. For instance, someone who elopes gets recognized by the state, but neglects the community aspect and probably the religious authority of marriage as well. Couples that are living together might have had a church wedding, might be recognized as married by their family and friends, but they never got recognized by the state, and so they have to deal with the consequences of not having that authority in their marriage. Another example is gay marriage. Homosexuals already have the support of their community. They have that authority. But why many religious conservatives are against gay marriage is because they see it as coming after the authority of the church. On the whole, when gay rights groups are asking for recognition of marriage, they're not asking to be married in churches because we've already chased them away from the churches. What they're asking for is recognition by the state. In a very real sense, we are talking about completely different marriages, and we are confusing it because we are using the same term. Here's maybe a more helpful definition of marriage. A marriage is a relationship that has been formally recognized by the primary authority or authorities in that couple's life. Side tangent, if you're a Christian and you're more upset when somebody doesn't sign the paperwork with the state than doesn't take their vows before God, you've shown what you're your ultimate authority is. Along with that recognition, of course, comes some amount of submission to the rules, expectations, and requirements that go along with marriage with that particular authority. But we need to remember that these are actually different forms of marriage, and different authorities can recognize different people as married. The debate is not helped when we use one term for 3 different types of marriage. So the next time you talk about marriage, remember, love is not the same thing as marriage. Not all marriages are the same. They could be relying on the authority of community, the authority of God, or the authority of the state to justify and regulate their marriage. Make sure that when you talk to somebody, you are clear on exactly what type of marriage you are each talking about. And if you are planning on getting married yourself, make sure that you recognize what authority you're actually seeking and what authority you're not seeking in your marriage. If we do those things, I think the marriage conversation will be greatly simplified, even on such a complex issue. As always, thanks for watching.